June 23, 1944. Dawn. Outskirts of Vitebsk, Belarusian Soviet Socialist Republic. Oberleutnant Klaus Richter presses his eye against the viewing slit of his Panzer IV, scanning the tree line ahead. The morning mist clings to the birch forest like a shroud. Behind him, 17 tanks from the 4th Panzer Division rumble forward in formation, their engines growling in the pre-dawn silence. Richter's crew is exhausted. They've been fighting a retreating battle for weeks, and ammunition is running dangerously low. Then he hears it, the unmistakable bark of German 88mm anti-aircraft guns. But they're firing from the wrong direction. "Contact front," his gunner shouts, but confusion floods the radio channels. The shells screaming toward them are German-made, yet they're coming from Soviet positions. Richter watches in disbelief as the lead tank in his column explodes in a fountain of flame and metal. The turret cartwheels through the air like a child's toy.
The 2nd Panzer lurches to a halt, its tracks shredded by what sounds impossibly like a German POC 40 anti-tank gun. This is Operation Bagration, the Soviet offensive that will become the single most devastating defeat in German military history. And the Red Army isn't just using their own weapons anymore. 3 years earlier, the Wehrmacht had stormed into the Soviet Union with what seemed like unstoppable momentum. German tanks crushed Soviet defenses, German artillery reduced entire cities to rubble, and German small arms proved superior in almost every engagement. The Soviets bled equipment at catastrophic rates, thousands of tanks destroyed, millions of rifles abandoned in hasty retreats. But the Red Army had learned something the Germans never anticipated. Every defeated battle left behind a treasure trove of weapons that could be turned against their makers. At first, it was desperate improvisation. Surrounded Soviet units would strip German corpses for Mauser rifles and MP-40 submachine guns simply to keep fighting. Tank crews whose T-34s had run out of ammunition would abandon them and commandeer damaged German panzers, learning to operate the foreign machines through trial and error. But by 1944, what began as desperation had evolved into systematic doctrine. The Soviet High Command established specialized trophy brigades, units dedicated to recovering, repairing, and redistributing captured German equipment. Entire repair depots spring up behind the front lines, staffed by engineers who learned German technical manuals and became experts in maintaining everything from panzer tanks to MG-42 machine guns. The Soviets even printed their own instruction manuals in Russian, complete with diagrams showing how to operate captured weapons. Now, as Richter's panzer column disintegrates under fire from their own guns, he's witnessing the culmination of this strategy.
The 88mm flak guns hammering his position were captured during the Kursk offensive the previous summer. The POC 40s destroying his tanks were seized during the recent liberation of Ukraine. Even the small arms fire crackling from the forest, those are German weapons too. "Reverse! Reverse!" Richter screams into his radio, but it's too late. Another panzer erupts in flames to his left. Through the smoke, he catches a glimpse of something that makes his blood run cold. Soviet infantry advancing with German rifles slung over their shoulders, their uniforms festooned with German stick grenades. One soldier is manning a captured MG-42, the same machine gun that had been Germany's answer to Soviet mass infantry attacks. The irony is savage. The Wehrmacht had built its blitzkrieg doctrine on technological superiority.
Now that same technology was being wielded against them by an enemy who had learned not just to match it, but to multiply its effect by turning captured arsenals into weapons of retribution. Richter's panzer lurches backward, tracks churning mud as the driver desperately tries to escape the kill zone. The radio crackles with panicked German voices, some calling for air support that won't come, others simply screaming. Through the chaos, Richter hears something that chills him more than the explosions. Soviet voices shouting commands in broken German, learned from captured instruction manuals.
His loader, a 19-year-old from Hamburg named Franz, stares wide-eyed at the carnage. "Herr Oberleutnant, those guns, they're ours, aren't they?" Richter doesn't answer. He knows the bitter mathematics now. Every German tank destroyed in 1941 during the failed march on Moscow, every artillery piece abandoned during the retreat from Stalingrad, every rifle dropped by casualties during the meat grinder at Kursk. The Soviets had collected them all, cataloged them, repaired them, and now wielded them with devastating efficiency. The Soviet First Baltic Front had captured over 900 German artillery pieces in the past month alone. General Bagration's forces didn't just salvage these weapons, they integrated them into their fire plans with meticulous precision. German 105mm howitzers, once used to shell Leningrad, now rained fire on Wehrmacht positions. Captured Nebelwerfer rocket launchers, the dreaded screaming mimes that had terrorized Soviet troops, were turned back against German defensive lines with psychological impact that couldn't be measured. Richter's Panzer finally reaches a defilade position behind a collapsed barn. He risks opening the commander's hatch to survey the disaster. 11 of his 17 tanks are burning. The rest are scattered, trying to find cover. But it's the infantry engagement to his right that makes him truly understand what's happening. Soviet Guards riflemen are advancing in a coordinated assault, and nearly half of them carry German weapons. Mauser Kar 98K rifles crack with precision fire. An entire squad operates a captured MG-42, its 1,000-round-per-minute roar unmistakable. Richter even spots a Soviet officer wielding a German MP-40 submachine gun, the weapon's distinctive profile silhouetted against the smoke. But the most shocking sight is the tanks emerging from the forest. They're German, Panzer IVs and even a captured Panther, repainted in Soviet green with red stars hastily stenciled on their turrets. The crews have been trained at special facilities near Moscow, where captured German tankers were sometimes coerced into teaching Soviet soldiers how to operate the complex machinery. Now these trophy tanks fight alongside T-34s in combined arms assaults that mirror German tactics back at their creators. The numbers tell a story of industrial-scale appropriation. By mid-1944, the Red Army operates entire battalions equipped primarily with captured German weapons. The 45th Guards Rifle Division uses over 300 captured German machine guns. Artillery regiments supplement their Soviet guns with hundreds of German pieces. Even the NKVD security troops guarding rear areas carry German rifles, freeing up Soviet-made weapons for frontline use. A shell explodes 30 meters from Richter's position, showering his tank with dirt. He drops back into the turret and slams the hatch. His radio operator is frantically trying to reach division headquarters, but the airwaves are jammed with distress calls. The entire Vitebsk salient is collapsing. "Sir, orders?" his gunner asks, voice tight with fear. Richter stares at his ammunition counter. 12 rounds remaining. Against an enemy that seems to have endless supplies of German ammunition, captured from earlier battles, stockpiled for this very moment. The Soviets aren't just defeating the Wehrmacht, they're using Germany's own industrial might against it. Every captured round and shell becoming a death sentence for German soldiers. "We fight our way out," Richter finally says, "southwest toward Minsk." But even as he gives the order, he knows the terrible truth. They're not just fighting the Red Army anymore. They're fighting themselves. The retreat toward Minsk becomes a nightmare of recognition. Every explosion, every muzzle flash carries the signature of German engineering turned against its makers. Richter's remaining panzers weave through abandoned villages, past burning supply columns, past infantry units that have dissolved into panicked fragments, and everywhere the sound of German weapons wielded by Soviet hands. In the village of Seno, 40 kilometers west, Hauptmann Werner Vogt experiences his own revelation. His infantry company has taken defensive positions in a brick factory, waiting for the Soviet advance they know is coming. When it arrives at 1400 hours, Vogt immediately recognizes the preparatory barrage, German 150mm howitzers, their distinctive report unmistakable even at distance. "They're using our own guns to range us," his artillery liaison officer whispers, face pale. The man had spent 3 years calling in fire from those exact weapons. Now he's on the receiving end.
The psychological warfare is deliberate and devastating. Soviet commanders have learned that German troops react differently when facing their own weapons. There's a moment of hesitation, a split second of cognitive dissonance that can mean the difference between effective defense and collapse. Soviet infantry officers are trained to shout German commands during assaults, creating confusion in the chaos of battle. Some units even used captured German signal flares and radio protocols to sow disorder. When the assault comes, Vogt watches through binoculars as Soviet soldiers advance behind a curtain of German artillery fire. The infantry carries a mixture of Soviet and German weapons, but it's the German ones that seem to inflict the deepest wounds to morale. His machine gunner, a veteran who survived Stalingrad, actually freezes when he recognizes the MG-42s firing from the Soviet line. "That's Lieutenant Hoffmann's gun," the soldier mutters, from 3rd Company.
"We lost it last month near Orsha. It's not just a weapon anymore. It's a ghost, returned to haunt them." The scale of German equipment loss is staggering. Since June 22nd, just yesterday, Operation Bagration has already netted the Soviets over 2,000 artillery pieces, 1,300 tanks and assault guns, and countless thousands of small arms. The Wehrmacht's Army Group Center, once 800,000 strong, is being systematically destroyed, and its entire arsenal is being absorbed into Soviet logistics. Soviet supply officers have become experts in German ammunition types. They know that 7.92 by 57mm Mauser rounds fit perfectly in their captured rifles. They understand that German 75mm tank ammunition works in captured Panzer IVs. They've even learned to appreciate the superior optics in German weapons. The Zeiss scopes at Soviet snipers now mount on captured rifles are prized trophies.
In Moscow, a special department of the People's Commissariat of Defense coordinates the redistribution of captured equipment. Technical experts produce training films showing Soviet soldiers how to field strip German weapons. Translators work around the clock converting German technical manuals. Armorers learn the quirks of German machinery, how Panther tanks require specific maintenance, how MG-42s need different lubricants in winter. But perhaps most grimly, the Soviets have learned to use German ammunition supplies against their former owners. Every captured depot, every overrun supply column means more rounds that will eventually come screaming back. It's a closed loop of violence, where Germany's industrial capacity feeds its own destruction. Vogt's position at the brick factory holds for 3 hours before Soviet tanks, a mixture of T-34s and captured German Panzer IVs, break through. As he orders the retreat, a burst of machine gun fire nearly cuts him down.
He recognizes the sound instantly. An MG-42, probably manufactured at the Mauser factory in Oberndorf, shipped east with such pride just months ago. Now it's killing Germans, in German hands, or rather, in Soviet hands, that have learned to use German weapons better than some Germans themselves.
June 26th, 1944. 0600 hours. Soviet rear area, 15 kilometers east of Borisov. Major Ivan Petrov walks through what the Red Army calls a trophy park, a sprawling collection point where captured German equipment arrives in an endless stream. The morning sun illuminates hundreds of vehicles, Panzer IVs with shattered tracks, Stug 3 assault gun with blown turrets, half-tracks riddled with bullet holes. Soviet recovery crews work methodically, cataloging everything, assessing what can be repaired and what must be cannibalized for parts. Petrov commands the 47th Trophy Brigade, one of dozens of specialized units created for this exact purpose. His men aren't frontline fighters. They're scavengers, mechanics, and logisticians who follow the advancing Red Army like industrial vultures. But their work is arguably as important as any tank assault or artillery barrage. Comrade Major, his deputy, Captain Sokolov, approaches with a clipboard. Today's inventory:
47 Panzer IVs, 18 Panthers, 63 various artillery pieces, over 2,000 small arms. He pauses. And something special, a nearly intact Tiger tank, abandoned with mechanical failure. Petrov's eyes light up. Tiger tanks are the crown jewels of captured equipment, heavy, powerful, terrifying, and rare enough that each one represents a significant intelligence coup. This particular Tiger, number 312, was abandoned by its crew near Minsk when its transmission failed. Soviet recovery teams reached it before German engineers could destroy it. The Tiger sits at the center of the trophy park like a monument to German engineering hubris. Petrov walks around it, running his hand along the thick armor. 88mm main gun, 600 horsepower Maybach engine, 56 tons of steel that once struck fear into Soviet tank crews. Now it will be studied, repaired, and potentially turned against its makers.
But Petrov knows the real treasure isn't just the tank, it's what's inside. German technical manuals, ammunition, spare parts, even personal effects that provide intelligence about unit dispositions and morale. Every captured vehicle is a library of information. The Soviet system for processing captured equipment has evolved into something remarkably efficient. First-line trophy teams follow immediately behind advancing forces, marking disabled vehicles and securing weapons. Second-line brigades like Petrov's handle recovery and initial assessment. Third-line depot facilities perform repairs and redistribution. The entire apparatus employs tens of thousands of soldiers and civilians. At Repair Depot Number 7, outside Smolensk, Soviet engineers have reverse-engineered German weapons with impressive speed. They've learned that the MG-42's high rate of fire comes from its revolutionary recoil system.
They've studied the Panther's sloped armor and incorporated lessons into Soviet tank design. They've even improved upon some German innovations. Soviet armorers discovered that captured Panzerfaust anti-tank weapons can be modified for better reliability in cold weather. Petrov watches as his crews begin the process of making the Tiger operational. A Soviet mechanic, formerly a tractor engineer from Minsk, crawls underneath to inspect the transmission. Another examines the gun breech. A translator sits in the commander's position, reading through German maintenance logs found in the turret. "How long until it's combat ready?" Petrov asks. 2 weeks, maybe 3, Sokolov replies. "We need parts from other captured Tigers. But Comrade Major, there's something else." He leads Petrov to a covered truck. Inside are crates of German ammunition, 88mm shells, machine gun belts, rifle rounds. Thousands upon thousands of rounds, captured from a Wehrmacht supply depot overrun yesterday. Each crate is marked with German factory codes and lot numbers. Some of this ammunition was manufactured just weeks ago, shipped from German factories that are now being bombed around the clock by American and British aircraft. Estimate? Petrov asks. Enough to supply an entire rifle division for a month, Sokolov says. All German weapons, all German ammunition. We're essentially creating a German-equipped Soviet unit. And they are. Across the Eastern Front,
Soviet commanders are forming ad hoc battalions equipped entirely with captured weapons. The 3rd Guards Army operates an entire regiment of captured German artillery. The 5th Guards Tank Army has incorporated dozens of captured panzers into its order of battle. Even partisan units behind German lines are being supplied with captured weapons, creating a bizarre situation where German patrols encounter guerrillas using German guns. The psychological impact cannot be overstated. German soldiers increasingly fear that every weapon they lose will eventually be used against them. Officers worry about supply depots being overrun. Tank crews are ordered to destroy their vehicles rather than abandon them, but in the chaos of retreat, these orders are often impossible to execute. Petrov climbs onto the Tiger's hull and looks east, toward the sound of distant artillery. Somewhere out there, German units are fighting desperately to escape the Minsk pocket, and when they inevitably fall, their weapons will flow back here, to this trophy park, to be cataloged and redistributed and turned into instruments of their own destruction. Get this Tiger operational as fast as possible, Petrov orders. I want it fighting within 10 days. The ultimate irony: German engineering, German steel, German ingenuity, all of it now serving the Red Army's march toward Berlin.
July 3rd, 1944, 14:30 hours, Eastern approaches to Minsk. Oberleutnant Klaus Richter's panzer has been reduced to a mobile coffin. 9 days of continuous retreat have stripped away everything except survival instinct. His crew of 5 is now 3. The loader killed by sniper fire outside Borisov, the radio operator lost when they abandoned a previous tank. Richter himself carries a Soviet PPSH submachine gun scavenged from a dead soldier because his Luger ran out of ammunition 3 days ago. The encirclement of Minsk is tightening like a noose. Over 100,000 German troops are trapped in the pocket, and Soviet forces are closing from all directions. Richter's remaining tanks, just 4 now, are trying to punch through the Soviet lines at a weak point identified by reconnaissance. It's a desperate gamble, and everyone knows it. Then, the bombardment begins. The first shells are Soviet Katyusha rockets, the Stalin's organs that have traumatized German troops since 1941.
But the follow-up barrage is different. Richter recognizes the report immediately. German 105mm and 150mm howitzers, firing in coordinated volleys. The precision is unmistakable. These aren't random captured guns fired by untrained crews. These are German weapons integrated into Soviet fire plans, operated by crews who have studied German artillery doctrine. "They're using our own procedures against us," his gunner says, voice hollow with exhaustion. "Our timing, our spacing, everything." The man is right. Soviet artillery officers have done more than just capture German guns. They've studied German fire control methods, German ranging techniques, German counter-battery tactics. Some Soviet forward observers even use captured German optical equipment, the superior Zeiss optics providing clearer targeting than Soviet-made alternatives. When the barrage lifts, the assault comes from multiple directions.
Soviet infantry supported by tanks, and among those tanks, Richter sees them clearly now, captured German panzers, fighting alongside T-34s in perfect coordination. A Panzer IV with Soviet markings fires at a German position 200 meters to Richter's left. The cruel symmetry is complete. The battle deteriorates into chaos. German units, exhausted and ammunition depleted, face Soviet forces that seem endlessly supplied. And much of that supply comes from German sources. Captured fuel depots keep Soviet vehicles moving. Captured ration stores feed Soviet soldiers. Captured medical supplies treat Soviet wounded. In one particularly bitter engagement, a German machine gun nest is silenced by fire from a captured MG-42. The German gunner's last thought, perhaps, is recognition.
That distinctive sound, that impossible rate of fire. Death delivered by Teutonic engineering, just not in Teutonic hands. Richter's tank takes a hit at 1620 hours.
The shell, probably from a captured POC 40 anti-tank gun, punches through the side armor and detonates inside. His driver is killed instantly. The gunner loses an arm. Richter drags him from the burning hull as ammunition begins cooking off, each explosion a punctuation mark on their defeat. They stumble into a German defensive position held by remnants of an infantry regiment. The commander, an Oberst with iron cross and weary eyes, barely glances at them. "How many tanks left?" he asks. "None, Herr Oberst," Richter replies. "All destroyed or abandoned." The Oberst nods as if this confirms something he already knew. "They're using our weapons everywhere now. I've counted at least 20 different German artillery pieces in the bombardments, our own Nebelwerfers, our own mortars. Even heard reports of Soviet snipers using our Mauser rifles with Zeiss scopes." A young lieutenant, barely 20, speaks up. "Sir, I don't understand. How can they maintain all that equipment?"
The logistics must be impossible. The Oberst laughs bitterly. They're using our maintenance manuals, our spare parts, our training procedures. We taught them, Lieutenant. Every weapon we lost, every vehicle we abandoned, it all became a training aid for the enemy. The truth is even more systematic than the Oberst realizes. The Soviet Central Front alone has captured and integrated over 500 German artillery pieces in the past 2 weeks. The Second Belarusian Front operates entire battalions equipped with German weapons. Even the Soviet Air Force has captured and studied German aircraft, learning tactics and technologies to improve their own designs. As night falls, the pocket around Minsk becomes a killing ground, illuminated by burning vehicles and exploding ammunition. German forces make desperate breakout attempts, only to be cut down by their own weapons in Soviet hands. The sound of MG-42s, Kar 98K rifles, and German artillery creates a surreal symphony, familiar yet alien, comforting yet terrifying. Richter sits in a shell crater, cradling his wounded gunner. Around them, German soldiers prepare for what might be their last stand. And in the darkness, the sounds of battle continue, punctuated by the distinctive reports of German weapons, each one a reminder of how completely the tables have turned. The Wehrmacht came to the Soviet Union confident in its technological superiority. Now that same technology has become the instrument of its destruction, wielded by an enemy that learned not just to fight Germans, but to fight like Germans, with German weapons. July 8, 1944, 0345 hours. Abandoned farmhouse, 12 kilometers east of Minsk. Richter wakes to the sound of German voices, but they're speaking Russian. His hand instinctively reaches for the Soviet PPSH beside him before his exhausted mind processes what's happening. Outside the farmhouse, Soviet soldiers are using captured German radios, transmitting false orders on Wehrmacht frequencies. It's a deception tactic the Red Army has perfected. Create confusion, sow panic, redirect German units into ambushes. His wounded gunner, Friedrich, lies beside him, fever-hot and delirious. The makeshift bandage on his arm is soaked through. They've been separated from their unit for 2 days now, hiding in abandoned buildings, drinking from puddles, surviving on raw potatoes dug from fields. Around them, the remnants of Army Group Center are being systematically annihilated. Through the farmhouse window, Richter watches Soviet troops move past in the pre-dawn darkness.
What strikes him isn't just their numbers, it's their equipment. Nearly every third soldier carries a German weapon, Kar 98K rifles slung over shoulders, MP-40 submachine guns cradled in arms. One sergeant wears a German belt with German stick grenades hanging from it. Another soldier has a German helmet, the Nazi eagle scratched off, but the distinctive shape unmistakable. They're not just using German weapons anymore. They're wearing German equipment, using German field gear, even marching in boots stripped from German corpses. The Red Army has become a hybrid force, Soviet in ideology, but increasingly German in material. A Soviet supply truck rumbles past, and Richter sees crates in the back marked with German text. Ammunition, probably, or rations, or medical supplies. Everything the Wehrmacht brought to Russia, everything manufactured in German factories and shipped east with such confidence 3 years ago. Now it sustains the enemy.
Friedrich groans, and Richter gives him water from a German canteen they found yesterday. Even this small mercy is German-made, captured and reused. There's no escaping the irony. As dawn breaks, the sounds of battle intensify. Soviet forces are making their final push to close the Minsk pocket completely. The bombardment that accompanies this assault is overwhelming, and Richter can identify each type of gun by its report. Soviet 122mm howitzers, yes, but also German 105s, German 150s, even German Nebelwerfer rockets. The Soviets have assembled a combined artillery force that merges both nations' arsenals into a single, devastating whole. The psychological impact on German troops is catastrophic. Richter has seen men break down crying when they recognize their own weapons being used against them. He's watched officers lose their composure when hearing German artillery fire from Soviet positions.
The Wehrmacht's entire doctrine was built on technological and tactical superiority, and now that superiority has been appropriated by the enemy. A German infantry squad stumbles into the farmhouse around 0700 hours, 10 men in tattered uniforms, eyes hollow with shock. Their Feldwebel, a veteran with a scarred face, slumps against the wall and lights a cigarette with shaking hands. "We're finished," he says simply, "completely surrounded, and they're killing us with our own weapons. I watched a Panther tank, our own damn Panther, destroy half my company this morning. Soviet crew, German machine." One of his soldiers, barely 18, starts laughing hysterically. "My brother works in the Krupp factory. He makes tank guns. I wonder if he made the one that's killing us now." The Feldwebel slaps him quiet, but the damage is done. The psychological warfare is complete. German soldiers no longer face just an enemy. They face their own industrial might turned against them, their own engineering genius made into instruments of their destruction. By mid-morning, Soviet forces have tightened the noose to the point of strangulation. Richter can hear German units being overrun in all directions. Each collapse is accompanied by the sounds of battle, and increasingly, those sounds are German. MG-42s, KR-98Ks, German grenades, German mortars. The Red Army has become an echo of the Wehrmacht, using German methods and German materials to destroy German soldiers. Around 1100 hours, a Soviet tank column approaches the farmhouse. Richter sees them through a gap in the wall, 3 T-34s and 2 captured Panzer IVs, all bearing Soviet markings. The mixed force represents everything that has gone wrong for Germany on the Eastern Front. The Soviets haven't just matched German technology, they've absorbed it, integrated it, multiplied its effectiveness by combining it with their own vast resources. The Feldwebel stands slowly. "We can't run anymore. We can't fight. We have maybe 50 rounds of ammunition between all of us." He looks at Richter, half of which is Soviet ammunition we scavenged. The other half is German ammunition the Soviets will scavenge from us. The circle is complete. The weapons flow both ways now, but the tide runs overwhelmingly in one direction. For every Soviet rifle a German soldier captures,
the Red Army captures 100 German weapons. For every Soviet tank destroyed, 3 German panzers are knocked out and later repaired by Soviet crews. Richter helps Friedrich to his feet. His gunner can barely walk, fever making his movements uncoordinated. Outside, Soviet soldiers are calling for surrender in broken German, their voices amplified through captured German loudspeakers.
"It's over," Richter says quietly. The Feldwebel nods. 3 years ago, we thought we'd conquer Russia in 3 months. Now Russia is conquering us with our own weapons. They walk out into the morning sun, hands raised, as Soviet soldiers advance with a mixture of German and Soviet weapons pointed at them. And somewhere in the distance, the distinctive sound of an MG-42 continues its deadly chatter. German engineering serving Soviet victory.
July 11th, 1944. Soviet POW collection point, outskirts of Minsk. Richter stands among thousands of German prisoners, a sea of gray uniforms and defeated faces stretching in every direction. Soviet guards patrol the perimeter, and the weapons they carry tell the complete story of the Eastern Front. A mix of Soviet PPSH submachine guns and German MP-40s, Soviet Mosin Nagant rifles and German KR-98Ks. Some guards wear German belts, German boots, German field caps with the insignia removed. The Battle of Minsk is over. Army Group Center has ceased to exist as a fighting force. Of the 400,000 German soldiers who started Operation Bagration 3 weeks ago, over 300,000 are dead or captured. The losses are greater than Stalingrad, and the equipment losses are staggering beyond comprehension. A Soviet officer walks through the prisoner columns, a translator beside him. He stops near Richter's group and addresses them in German.
You came to our country with tanks and guns, thinking yourselves invincible. Now we march to Berlin with your tanks and guns. Everything you brought, we have taken. Everything you built, we will use to destroy you. It's not a boast, it's a statement of fact. The final accounting of Operation Bagration reveals the scope of German material losses. Over 2,000 tanks and assault guns, 10,000 artillery pieces, 57,000 vehicles, and hundreds of thousands of small arms. Much of this equipment is damaged or destroyed, but vast quantities are captured intact or repairable. Soviet trophy brigades work around the clock, processing the haul. By August 1944, the Red Army will operate entire divisions partially equipped with German weapons. The 1st Guards Tank Army incorporates dozens of captured Panthers and Tigers into its order of battle. Artillery regiments supplement their Soviet guns with hundreds of German pieces. Infantry divisions carry German rifles, German machine guns, German mortars.
The Wehrmacht's eastern arsenals have been completely appropriated. But the impact goes beyond simple numbers. Soviet engineers have learned from German technology. The sloped armor of the Panther influences post-war Soviet tank design. German optical systems improve Soviet artillery accuracy. Even German tactical radios are studied and reverse-engineered. Every captured weapon becomes a lesson. Every defeated battle, a classroom. Friedrich, Richter's gunner, died during the night. Fever and blood loss took him before Soviet medics could provide treatment. Richter helped bury him in a mass grave with hundreds of other German soldiers. No markers, no ceremony. Just another casualty of a war that Germany is now losing with its own weapons. A Soviet supply convoy rolls past the POW camp around noon, and Richter watches the trucks carefully. The vehicles themselves are a mix of Soviet ZIS-5s and American Studebakers provided through Lend-Lease.
But the cargo they carry tells a different story.
crates marked with German text, German artillery pieces towed behind trucks, even a captured Tiger tank on a flatbed trailer being transported east for study. One of the German prisoners, a Hauptmann from a panzer regiment, stands beside Richter and stares at the Tiger. "I know that tank," he says quietly. "Number 312. It broke down near Borisov. We couldn't recover it in time." He laughs bitterly. "Now the Soviets will repair it, study it, maybe even use it against us. We gave them our best weapon." The Hauptmann is right. That particular Tiger will be shipped to the Kubinka testing ground near Moscow, where Soviet engineers will disassemble it completely, measuring every component, analyzing every system. The knowledge gained will influence Soviet heavy tank development for decades. German engineering excellence, serving Soviet military science.
As the sun sets on July 11th, Richter reflects on the terrible mathematics of the Eastern Front. Germany invaded the Soviet Union with approximately 3,350 tanks and 7,200 artillery pieces. In 3 years of fighting, the Wehrmacht has lost tens of thousands of armored vehicles and artillery pieces on the Eastern Front alone. Many were destroyed, yes, but thousands upon thousands were captured, repaired, and turned against their makers. The Soviets call it trophy equipment. German soldiers have a darker name for it: betrayal steel, weapons that have turned against their creators. By war's end in May 1945, Soviet forces will have captured and utilized over 10,000 German artillery pieces, thousands of armored vehicles, and millions of small arms. Entire Soviet units will fight the final battles using predominantly German equipment. When the Red Army storms Berlin, German defenders will face the ultimate irony:
Being killed by German bullets fired from German guns held by Soviet soldiers. The weapons Germany brought to conquer Russia have become the instruments of Germany's defeat. Every panzer left burning in a Russian field, every artillery piece abandoned in retreat, every rifle dropped by a dead soldier, all of it fed back into the Soviet war machine, multiplying the effect of Soviet industrial production, extending the reach of Soviet military power. As night falls over the POW camp, Richter hears a sound in the distance that he knows intimately: the bark of a German 88mm gun. It's firing from a Soviet position, supporting the Red Army's continued advance westward, toward Poland, toward Germany, toward Berlin. The sound echoes across the darkening landscape, a German weapon in Soviet hands, writing the final chapters of the Third Reich's destruction. It is perhaps the most bitter irony of World War II.
That German engineering genius, once the pride of the Wehrmacht, became the very instrument that helped bring Germany to its knees. Richter closes his eyes and tries not to listen, but the sound continues, relentless and unmistakable. German steel serving Soviet victory. Captured weapons turned against their creators. The ultimate price of failed conquest.